everybody, and welcome. This is the Dubcast with Dubside, exploring the world of traditional kayaking, Greenlandic culture, and the voices that keep the Arctic traditions alive.
And I'm Dubside. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I'm really blown away by the response we got from our GoFundMe campaign over the last week, and by the incredible generosity of our listeners.
Yes, and that means I will be going to Greenland again this summer, and I appreciate everyone's support in that regard. And I do have enough money to go to Copenhagen as well, so another stop in Tivoli to see the music and find people to interview, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Thanks again to everybody who donated and shared the campaign or just sent us some encouragement. I think this trip to Greenland is important because there are some very interesting developments happening there right now. And I think we're going to come back with stories that our listeners won't hear anywhere else. Greenland is at a crossroads in a lot of ways, culturally, environmentally, and politically. It's a rare chance to witness and document it in real time.
And I will be sending guitar picks out to everybody who requested one. Thank you very much for that.
Hey, Dubside, I wanted to also mention that I really liked your interview with Max that we published the last episode.
Yes, Max from East Greenland. Yeah. I'm assuming he will be back at the competition again this coming summer. So,
oh, really? Okay.
Well, he may have some kids different or some the same, but hopefully I'll run into him again and get the latest on what he's been up to.
What I found really interesting about that interview was that he learned how to build skin-on frames by looking at Chris Cunningham's book, and also from Brian Schultz's videos.
Yeah.
I think this is what we're talking about when we're talking about preserving the tradition. The knowledge of kayak construction has come full circle from Greenland to America, back to Greenland.
Yeah. Well, I see the Greenlanders always very resourceful. So if you're trying to build a kayak and you can find a book about it, it doesn't matter so much that if it might have not have been written by a Greenlander, it might have better pictures in the Greenland books they have, but whatever. They'll find something that's useful and they'll use it. And then if they've got something else, they'll use that. So whoever does the documentation, it gets pulled into service. I've seen in Greenland on people's bookshelves, they've got Harvey Golden's book with the big, thick kayaks of Greenland with all the surveys in it, because he did the work and he wrote it all down, so they can use that to figure things out.
Wow. One more thing I wanted to mention is that I just wrapped up a great interview with Paul Steinberg and Noy Davis, two of the key organizers behind STIKS, the South Sound Traditional Inuit Kayak Symposium.
Cool.
We had a fantastic conversation about the history of STIKS, what's planned for this year, and why STIKS continues to be such a special gathering for the traditional kayaking community in the Pacific Northwest. So I'll be releasing that full interview soon, so stay tuned. And if you haven't already marked your calendar, STIKS is happening June 6th through 9th in Skamakawa, Washington on the Columbia River. It's shaping up to be a fun and exciting event, especially because Dubside will be in attendance.
Yes, indeed. Well, very soon, I will be heading down to Florida for the TRAQS, Traditional Kayakers of the South event. It's a bit south of Orlando, and that is May 1st through the 4th, or 2nd through the 4th. So anybody who's going to go to that will see me there.
Very good. Okay, so
we have here episode number 69. And this is my attempt to cover the latest on Greenland, although it's changing all the time. Greenland is in the news, but this is covering what I know about that and my analysis of that up to the present time.
All right, let's get to it.
Welcome to the Dubcast with Dubside. This is Dubcast number 69. I'm going to tell you about Greenland in regards to international politics. It's been in the news quite a bit lately, and I'll have to tell you for reference, I'm recording this in early April of 2025. So any major events that happened after that will not be included because I do not know about them yet. Last time in episode 68, I talked about an event at the Danish Embassy in Washington, D.C. that took place in November of 2024. And I told you about the entertainment aspect of it. Well, this time we'll look at the political aspects of it. And I'll play you some excerpts of things that occurred there. And I'll review the general past history of Greenland on their path towards independence, which hopefully you know something about if you've been listening to the podcast for a while. And I do have a piece of music. It's a repeat of something I've done some time ago that should be fairly appropriate for these times. Lately, it's been somewhat obligatory for the major news outlets to do a Greenland story, often sending reporters up there to poke around and see what they can find. And so I'd like to give you my version, since I've been there for quite a number of times, for quite a number of years, and maybe I've got my own unique perspective. I'm going to begin, as I do sometimes, with something completely off topic. Here's a puzzle I'll give you the answer to at the end of this episode, about half an hour from now. You'll have that much time to think about it. When I was a kid, my father took up whitewater canoeing, and my brothers and I enjoyed paddling maybe class 2 rivers, not really intense whitewater. And in later years, my father took to maintaining a stretch of a local river to keep it clear so it could be used by whitewater paddlers. And this river was not all that wide, so trees would fall across it and block the entire passage, and then other debris would come down the river and make a big clog that you couldn't get through. In order to keep the river open, my father took to bringing along a chainsaw, and he would cut open the blockages. But he found that chainsaws are not designed to be used underwater or even partially in water. And if you're cutting the final blockage from the downstream side, when it breaks through, you're going to get in the path of all this oncoming logs, branches, etc., and it's a rather precarious place to be. So the question is, how do you clear a pathway down a river without endangering yourself or ruining your equipment? That's the question. Now, you may have to think outside the box for this one. I'm going to summarize the major highlights of Greenland history in their path towards independence, going back to 1721, which we could say was the beginning of colonization. This continues for over 200 years, taking us to World War II, when Germany occupies Denmark, leaving Greenland in limbo until the U.S. stepped in to occupy Greenland and prevent any other foreign powers from making any claims on that land. And while that interaction was beneficial to Greenland, the relationship between Greenland and the U.S. has not always been without its issues. In 1951, the air base that the U.S. had set up in World War II was expanded quite a bit, and there were 3 Greenland villages that were in the way. So they were just relocated rather quickly, and the inhabitants were just told to get out and moved 100 kilometers away, which is very disrupting if you're a hunter who's spent your life living and hunting in a certain area. In the early 1960s, the U.S. embarked on a secret project to build a underground, or under the ice actually, nuclear missile network. And they got as far as digging it all out. They did not put any actual missiles in there that we know of, but they did have a nuclear reactor to power it. And it was abandoned due to a number of logistical issues, mainly that the ice was shifting more than they thought it would, so you couldn't keep the tunnels that you dug in the right dimensions for a long period of time. And this project and the nuclear materials imported there was not done with full permission of the Danes or the Greenlanders. And when they abandoned it, they left a lot of waste materials there, which are still there to this day. In 1968, at the above-ground air base, a B-52 bomber with nuclear weapons aboard crashed, generating significant radioactive contamination, and one of the nuclear bombs was never recovered. And I'll back up just a little bit to 1953, when Denmark granted full citizenship to the people of Greenland. And the idea here was cultural assimilation, which they thought was doing the Greenlanders a favor. But assimilation means your own culture gets diluted down to nothing. And the Inuit are a proud people and did not appreciate this. So this led to a fair amount of agitation. In the 70s, there was a band called Sume, which I've mentioned before in this Dubcast. They played a big part in that agitation. So in 1979, Greenland was granted home rule, allowing them to govern themselves for quite a few internal matters, but internationally it would still be Denmark in control. And the idea of being a completely independent nation kept on growing. There are a number of people in Greenland who are happy to still be part of Denmark, but the predominant sentiment is that Greenland should be completely independent. In 2009, the vote indicated as much, but they couldn't be completely independent and maintain their standard of living without coming up with some alternative form of income to replace the large subsidy that Denmark would provide every year. Seafood exports have always been a good source of income, not providing for everything, but the thinking at the time was that the exploratory oil drilling will yield a huge amount of oil, and that'll pay all the bills and everything will be fine. Well, the oil didn't really pan out, and there are environmental concerns. It's very expensive to bring stuff all the way back from the Arctic, and you have seasonal considerations. The mining done in Greenland, there's been limited amount. There's rubies, lead, zinc, a little bit of gold, and the price of that fluctuates. So sometimes it's profitable to mine that. Other times they close down the mines because it's not making any money. So Greenland has opted to push tourism, maybe not to pay all the bills, but to significantly increase the income in that sector. And so they embarked on building 3 airports. And the first one has opened up this past November in Nuuk. And they're looking to seriously boost tourism and help with the economy that way. In the fall of 2023, on this podcast, I interviewed Kenneth Høeg, Greenland's top diplomat in Washington, D.C., and we were discussing Greenland's striving towards full independence. I'll play back for you now one of his significant comments in that regard.
Well, any nation, beside a very few ones, can't be totally on their own. You need to have some close allies, some countries that you work closely with, and that's of course the process that Greenland will be in the decades to come, about defining who we should work closely with. because Greenland, being such a tiny nation in an enormous country, needs some good friends.
Needs some good friends. Now I'm going to take you to the reception at the Danish Embassy held in November of 2024, celebrating the opening of the new international airport in Nuuk, the capital of Greenland. Here are the remarks made by Jesper Sorensen, the Danish ambassador to the U.S. This took place one day before the U.S. presidential elections in the fall of 2024.
Here. Tonight we celebrate the Greenland-American relationship, and at the same time the close relationship between the Kingdom of Denmark and the United States. A relationship that goes way back, a relationship so close that we are so proud to call the United States our friend and our closest ally. And a relationship that will only be closer now with the new international airport. We have already seen that. From Nuuk to Nuuk. It could be the title of a book or a movie. Maybe it will be someday. For now, it is the title, From Nuuk to Nuuk, of a new beginning where a direct flight from the United States to Greenland will strengthen not only the relationship between the two countries, but also create options for economic growth and of development. It will open up opportunities for many Americans to visit and explore the beautiful country of Greenland, to see whales, northern lights, and an amazing culture, which we will all get a glimpse of this evening with the visiting choir. These are just a few of the things you can explore when visiting Greenland. And the new airport will also open up the door for Greenlanders to visit the United States and explore this amazing country. In the US, we also have very important developments to follow. None of us know what the situation will be politically after tomorrow. If anyone does, please tell me. I'm really dying to know. But one thing is certain. If the United States sneezes, we all catch a cold. We share many of the same interests and face many of the same challenges. Even though today is a celebration, we have to remember that we are not living in peaceful times. We have to remember the importance of the geopolitical position, strategic position of Greenland, and the role of the United States and the Kingdom of Denmark in securing the safety of all of us. We need to stay close, and with the airport and the new direct flight, we are closer than ever. In fact, only 4 hours and 15 minutes to be exact. We have never been this close. Before giving the floor to the ministry, I would like to give the floor to someone.
All right, so at this point, the ambassador introduces Kenneth Høeg, who makes a few remarks, and then he introduces Greenland's Minister of Business, Trade, Mineral Resources, Justice, and Gender Equality. Naya Nathanielsen is her name.
A very warm welcome to tonight. I'm so grateful for your participation in this evening's event, in which we celebrate the upcoming opening of the new international airport in Nuuk. A lot of opportunities arise. Amongst these opportunities is a new direct air route, as mentioned, to the United States. In 2026, 2 more airports will open, based in Qajaqers in the south and Inuit in the north. And it will be the first step of our ongoing update of our airport's infrastructure. So we hope to see you in all of these 3 cities in the future. One of these sectors that is set to gain a lot from this new airport is, of course, our tourism sector. It is a sector that holds enormous potential for growth and is already presenting itself as an important factor into our economy. That is the first time, really, that we have seen a sector that can not compete but play along with our fishery industry. So it's a lot for us. For Greenland, tourism is a great sector to develop since it has strong ties to both nature and culture, which is so important to us. Another sector worth mentioning in relation to new airports is our mineral sector, and yet another is our fisheries sector. These sectors all stand to gain from the investments in infrastructure, which again strengthens both the local as well as the society as a whole. We have long been celebrated for our breathtaking landscapes, rich cultural heritage, great natural resources, and we are so looking forward to share these with everybody else in the world. So we are not shy about that. We want to share everything we got. We want to communicate. We want to travel. We want to connect. But tonight is more than just business. It's also about deepening the relationship with the United States. As you mentioned, we have many shared interests and are able to look back on many years of working together for a stronger and safer Arctic, especially in times as these. So tonight, I also want to nod to those of you that in a very concrete way, on an everyday level, collaborate with us and helps us and work together with us. So thank you. In closing, I would like to extend my gratitude to our many partners for their tireless effort to bring opportunities to life, including Royal Greenland, whom are providing the wonderful Greenlandic seafood we are going to consume tonight, Greenland Airports, the builders of a new international airport represented by Mr. Milan Bro, as well as Air Greenland and Visit Greenland. And finally, thank you, Ambassador, for letting us use your wonderful settings here in your beautiful home. So I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you. And in Greenland, we do enjoy to eat, sing, and laugh. I'm sure we will get to all of that tonight, but we will start by the singing. So I will leave the floor to the choir.
And for a little more context, we were in the residence where the ambassador Jasper lives, which is quite ornate. And they had some Greenlandic food laid out very nicely on tables with fine dinnerware, and it was like the Greenlandic shrimp and other seafood. And everybody was dressed up. I had to get dressed up to go to this. And this is, I guess, how Washington, D.C. works, the schmoozing that goes on after things, and you meet the important people and you exchange information so you can get back to them to do your lobbying or business or whatever goes on there. This is not really my world, but I had stepped into it for that evening. And listening to the remarks that I just played, this was a happy celebration of the opening of an airport with the expectation of closer ties to the U.S. As Jasper said, we're closer than we've ever been before. We were only 4.5 hours away from Nuuk to New York. And the Greenland minister talking about increased trade possibilities and the expectation of more commerce going on. And a few mentions of the wars going on in the world and the need to stay close together and be a real partnership. And don't forget that Greenland has the objective of being completely independent from Denmark. So increasing trade and tourism will pay for things, and a good partnership with the U.S. would allow them perhaps to make that reality come even sooner. Well, the next day the election was held, and we know the results of that election. And come into January, February, and the statements made about acquiring Greenland and not ruling out military force changed the entire equation there. And the entity that the Greenlanders thought would be their best friend, the United States, now looks like a potential enemy, and there's all sorts of apprehension. And the prevailing sentiment by far in Greenland is, we are not for sale. You cannot buy us. Greenland is not for sale. Well, in that interview I did with Kenneth Hug, that I just played an excerpt of, we talked at length about owning land in Greenland. And he described how, to this day, they don't do private ownership of land in Greenland. They are worldly enough at this point to understand the concept, but they just don't do it in Greenland. Greenland has a prime minister, and a full complement of government officials. So when someone says, I want that island, I got to have it, and if I can't buy it, I'll just take it. And not even asking an official person in Greenland, just putting that statement out, and the Greenlanders hear about it secondhand. Well, perhaps I can convey how they feel about that. If you're not a parent, imagine you are one. And if you are a parent, think of when your kid or kids were pre-teen, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And someone said, I need those kids. I'll buy them. If I can't buy them, I'll just take them. And they didn't even ask you that. They just put that word out to your boss or your landlord or some other person that had influence over you. Now, no self-respecting parent is going to accept any amount of money for their child. You know that phrase, it doesn't hurt to ask? It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst they can do is say no. Well, there are times when it does hurt to ask. And in this situation, it wasn't even a question. It was a statement. I need that island. I need Greenland. We'll buy it or we'll just take it. That is deeply offensive to the people of Greenland. I realize this is not the first time the current president has indicated a desire for Greenland. In 2019, he voiced a similar sentiment, and back then it was kind of dismissed as a joke. He couldn't have been serious. But now we don't look at it that way. And the effect of this statement has been to throw a giant monkey wrench into the prospect of a very friendly working relationship as initiated by the opening of the new airport. The country they most thought would be their best friend now looks like it could be their enemy. Well, here's my assessment. It's not what anybody should do, but just here's my observation. These people, the Inuit, are not fazed by monkey wrenches. Last-minute changes, complete alteration of plans, that's when they step up. And the Greenland way is, we'll figure out something to make it work. On the fly, seat of our pants, we can do this. And so I am very curious to see what will happen here. And I have complete confidence that they will come out on top, getting what they want however they need to. And for us outsiders, this is a golden opportunity to learn something if we watch closely. And trying to predict, how all these different players are going to interact with Russia and the U.S. and the Chinese and Denmark and Greenland. It's a very complex situation. And it's a situation that bears very little resemblance to the situation that existed when those remarks were made at the embassy. But when plans go awry, the Inuit Greenland way is not to get discouraged or disillusioned, but to get resourceful and creative. They will find a way. That's what they've been doing for thousands of years. It may not be orthodox. It may not be the most efficient. From an outsider's perspective, it may not seem logical, elegant, or efficient. But it will have one all-important characteristic. It will work. I'd like to play a song from Dubcast number 25. And this is what I would consider to be a rallying cry for Greenlandic pride, fairly appropriate these days. And so this was done originally by a band called Hey, H-E-J, and then later done by Chili Friday. It's called Galashlit Nunaput. Sula sula aliana
Masuha Sekohasa Sakine Kinga Simavai Tahani Ditashluhe Aliana Nesabutit Kusana Nesashlitit Ashlani Nashlenika Sinanatit Kalashnik Nunaput Kalashnik Nunaput Ukiyu Shavagami Ashlavin Angashlute Isigalu Akisan Kihala Tuapute Aliana Nesabutit Kusana Nesashlutit Ashlanik Nashlenika Sinanatit Kalashnik Nunaput Kalashnik Nunaput Makasine Shlagavit Makala Nikushlute Ungasi Galuashluti Amani Tuapute Aliana Nesabutit Kusana Nesashlutit Ashlani Nashlenika Sinanatit Kalashnik Nunaput Kalashnik Nunaput Kalashnik Nunaput Kalashnik Nunaput Kalashnik Nunaput Kalashnik Nunaput.
Well, I don't have the entire translation of every verse, but the general idea is it's talking about what a beautiful and wonderful place Greenland is and the amazing scenery and how much the people love the land there. And the chorus, Kalashlit Nunaput, that just means our Greenland. Greenland recently held elections and has a new prime minister now, whose position on independence and international situation is not substantially different from the previous prime minister. But caught in the middle of all this fuss is my friend Kenneth Hug. Being the top representative to the U.S. of Greenland, he is right in the middle of it. And I have tried to stay in touch with him. He's been extremely busy. But the few times I have been able to talk to him, he has indicated that he would like Greenland's right to self-determination to be respected, and we can lend our concern and support for that idea. As to the idea that the U.S. needs Greenland for security purposes, well, Kenneth was pointing out that the U.S. has the base there that they've had since World War II. There have been over a dozen additional military installations in Greenland over the years that the U.S. has seen fit to shut down, and this was not due to anything the Greenlanders indicated, but action initiated by the U.S. alone. If, before all this went down, the U.S. had wanted to increase their military presence, pretty much all they had to do was ask politely and respectfully. Another big point has been the rare earth minerals that Greenland is known to have, but they're not just on the surface of the ground somewhere ready to be picked up. There's considerable investment and exploration that needs to be done, and Greenland has issued several permits to a number of operations, but very few of them have been American. So if the U.S. wants some of these mineral resources, they've got to show some investment initiative to make that happen. As events continue to develop, I may very well have to do a part 2 of this episode in the near future. All right, back to the question I posed at the beginning. How do you safely clear the debris blocking a river without endangering yourself or damaging your chainsaw? Bearing in mind the idea of thinking outside the box and making full use of available resources. My father would find the major components of an obstruction, the biggest branch or the main trunk of the tree, and he would cut through them almost completely, but not all the way. Then he would paddle on down the river. Goodbye. Looking for the next obstruction to work on. So the resource that he used here was the natural power of the river. Due to the fluctuations of the water level, a week or so later, he would come back, and it was all clear. The river itself had done the last little part of the job. Now, when he first started doing this, sometimes he would come back and the obstruction would still be there. But he learned over time just exactly how much to cut to ensure that it would be clear given time. And the other way of thinking outside the box was to realize that the task did not include an immediate deadline. You didn't actually have to be there as the job was completed. My father is no longer alive, but I certainly appreciate all his wisdom. Whatever river you're paddling on, whatever box you're thinking inside of or outside of, whatever international diplomacy situation you may find yourself in, thank you for listening to the Dubcast with Dubside.